Start, bench, cut these 3 Penn State running backs in college. Can you tell me who Penn State football is playing this weekend?
Sorry, what?
Welcome into the Penn State Pulse. I'm your host, Dylan Dawson, and we're kicking things off in a big way in episode 1. Joining me today is Penn State legend LaVar Arrington, one of the best to do it in the blue and white. LaVar was the most feared linebacker in college football in the late 90s and racked up a lengthy list of accomplishments along the way, including College Football Hall of Fame inductee, 2-time All-American, 2-time first-team All-Big Ten, Butkus Award winner, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and second overall pick in the 2000 NFL Draft, actually behind your teammate Courtney Brown. Thank you for joining me today, LaVar. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here, man.
Yes, sir. All right, so you can now add CEO to that list as well, as you're the founder of the Up On Game Media Network. And I'm honored to say that I'm now working with you as well, with the DisruptU PSU branch in particular. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So Up On Game, Dylan, was a brainchild of me and my partner, Ricardo Dickerson, and then we brought on our other partner, Steven Blanco. We felt like we could create a blueprint for building a brand that would ultimately be able to, you'd be ultimately able to build what it is that you want to do within media or within other sectors, other categories. And we wanted to set out to prove that it was possible to take a concept from nothing to a radio show, to a podcast, to a visual podcast, to whatever else it was going to be. And so that's what we did. We actually created a program. We didn't like the name. It was interesting name called Warrior Woke. Love the warrior part, hate the woke part. Just not into the whole woke thing. But it was basically a program where we taught young athletes and young aspiring people that wanted to be within like media, social media, digital spaces, creating content and giving a understanding and awareness of how to prepare, how to project, how to conduct yourself in front of the camera, how to put yourself and present yourself the best way that you possibly could present yourself. So that ultimately led to us going to the next phase of that, which was creating a show. And we created a podcast show called Up On Game. We eventually got that show taken on board for a nationally syndicated radio show on weekends for Fox Sports Radio. That ultimately led to me progressing and getting a 5-day-a-week morning drive show called 2 Pros and a Cup of Joe. So Up On Game is with TJ Hushmanzada and Plexico Burris. 2 Pros and a Cup of Joe is with Jonas Knox and Brady Quinn. 3 of the 4 hosts are former football greats that now are in media as well. So we just felt as though there's a blueprint to understanding how to build and grow your brand and being able to do it in this new world of technology and where the digital age has taken us to. And so that was kind of the catalyst for why we did what we did and how we got here in the first place. And so here we are. We created DisruptU PSU, which is our agency arm that now basically helps to guide, develop, incubate talent and business and product within the Penn State community. And I'm proud to be a part of you being our first signee to the brand and ultimately what I believe will be an anchor show for what it is that we're doing and an anchor talent. I believe that you are an amazing talent at what you do.
Thank you.
And so you're very welcome. And so to have the opportunity to work with you and to bring you on board to what it is that we're doing, to contribute to what we're doing and building. For what it's worth, I do believe he may be the first NIL non-athlete to be getting an NIL deal for college, which is, I think, pretty dope.
Yeah, we'll see.
Pretty exciting.
I mean, I remember hearing about you growing up as I was watching football, Brady, Plaxico Burress on the Steelers. So it's definitely cool to see former athletes, current athletes get involved with media. It just provides a really cool, different perspective, and it's always something that people want to tune into. As far as like long-term goals, expectations, what are you thinking for this?
Long-term goals is to build a successful production house, a successful brand, almost along the lines of iteration 2.0 of like what a Barstool would be, having tremendous personalities like yourself who are in the community, connected with the community, and creating not only funny and provocative content, but also purpose-driven content. I believe in giving back to your community, being a positive contributor to what it is that you do in your community. I'm one that represents first responders and military service members, also passionate about youth. So for me, those are the things that I will represent and have represented on our platform. And as it grows, there will be different things that people are passionate about with our student athletes of Penn State that come on and are a part of what we're doing, that I believe will be pretty cool to hear the stories, connect the interviews, connect the content, and connect the purpose to what it is that we're doing here, and ultimately shine a light on our Penn State athletes and our Penn State community on not only the great leaders that we have in our athletics, but also the bright minds and the great leaders that we have within the academic community of Penn State.
And how long have you been involved with media and all that stuff now?
It's been over a decade. I started off in Washington, D.C. My first job was with CBS Radio. It was 106.7 The Fan. Had a show called The LaVar Arrington Show with Chad Dukes. It was the #1 rated morning drive show, or afternoon drive show in the market. We did very well. I actually was a writer, a blogger, and a video blogger for the Washington Post. I did a column called Hard Knocks. It was interesting because at that point, I was writing and I was doing radio and I was doing television. And that was when all of that S, the proverbial S of the Penn State scandal hit the fan. So I'm all in media when our darkest time as an institution and a university hit. And so for me, I felt like it was perfect timing and an honor and a duty for me to be a beacon of light, a person of support during those dark times. A lot of people really turned their backs on us as a school and an institution. Thought there was a whole lot of unnecessary, unjust, unfair judgments that was passed on all of us, as if all of us had done something wrong, like we were this wicked, evil cult that condoned doing all of these crazy things. And that wasn't the case. And I wanted to make sure that me having a voice in media, that I use my voice and my platform to the better good of representing our community in the best way that I possibly could.
Can you tell me about your high school recruitment, and then when did you know it's going to be Penn State?
So I was a senior in '97, and I was highly recruited. I was actually highly recruited while I was in the 8th grade. As the story is told, I grew to 6'3" in the 6th grade. I was dunking a basketball in the 6th grade. So I was pretty freakishly athletic. I continued to kind of, develop. I had this love and passion for sports. I was a basketball player first, but I'm from Pittsburgh, so I love football. I played football. My family played football. Uncles played football. I grew up in football culture, and I was what you would say, someone who enjoyed athletics and competition. Really, it was really about competition. I was very competitive, and it ultimately led me down the road being a tailback and a linebacker playing football. So while I was playing basketball and playing track, I really was garnering a lot of attention playing football. I actually got a letter from Miami. Miami was the first school that sent me a letter. I was in the 8th grade. Notre Dame sent me a letter. Michigan sent me a letter. It was some crazy schools sending me letters. I'm in my 8th grade year. But what happened was I was playing 9th grade football because at the school I went to, they had a 9th grade team, they had a JV team, they had a varsity team. So when I was in the 8th grade, I was playing 9th grade ball. Somebody sent my film out and, asked my measurables and stuff like that. And they saw the footage of what I was doing, and they were sending me letters. Now, they weren't offering me scholarships, but they were sending a ton of letters. And so that was pretty cool to kind of feel that relevance because, I kind of was like one of those, the black duck type of deal where, you got all these pretty ducks like my older brother was, straight A student, super, super well liked and all that stuff. While I was like really rough around the edges, I wasn't popular. Nobody really wanted me around. I kind of got on people's nerves, stuff like that, right? So I was like one of them revenge type dudes. Like I'm in the gym, started working out because I couldn't beat up my older brother. Like I was jealous of my older brother. He was great at everything, including beating my ass, right? So I started lifting, and my whole motivation for lifting was to beat my brother up at some point in my life, right? But it turned into kind of like a salvation for me, exercising, working out, started getting recruited. And so that catalyst led to me being like ultimately competitive and very, very, very in tune with what my accomplishments were and my achievements were because nobody really wanted me around them for a long time, right? So I started getting a lot of great results on the field and in other arenas. I ran a 10.6, 10.7, 100 meters. At one point when I came to Penn State for a camp, I ran a 4.38 electric clock time 40 at 6'3". So I was like doing some like freakishly type stuff while I was in high school. And so for the longest time, I thought I was going to either go to Florida State or go to Miami because I was a big fan of linebackers, wanted to play linebacker, and I liked Ray Lewis and Derrick Brooks. Those were my favorite two linebackers in college. And Greg Lloyd was obviously Pittsburgh Steeler. He was my favorite pro linebacker. So I kind of patterned my style after that physical, violent type of mean type of dude playing the game. And a lot of schools were attracted to the way I played the game because I was fast and I was physical and I was mean. And for the most part, I felt like people acknowledged the fact that I had a very, very high football IQ. So my recruitment was pretty intense. At some point, I think I had about 4 packing boxes worth of letters, like 4, like packing boxes, like tall packing boxes, like full of letters. Like if you'd have dumped them out, it's crazy how many people had, who knows what they, if they wrote it or somebody else wrote it, who knows. But I had offers from everybody by probably my sophomore year, into my sophomore year. And for me, the recruitment process was fairly simple because I kind of felt like in my mind, I wanted to go to Miami. Some stuff happened at Miami. They were going on probation by the time I was going there. So I kind of decided that. Florida State recruited me, but they didn't recruit me as hard as other schools. So it was kind of like if I go out of state and I go play for a school like Florida State, they had recruited and offered a few guys that were in-state, guy by the name of Jamal Reynolds is one of the names that sticks out to me that got recruited to go there same year as me. And I just recall myself thinking, if I'm going to play linebacker, why would I not go to the school that's deemed linebacker U? And so that was when I started kind of looking at Penn State a little bit harder. I was already a fan because of the Fiesta Bowl. I can remember the time and place where I was at when they played the game with DJ Dozier and Shane Conlon and all those guys, Ray Isom and Bob White. And it's just a host of amazing football players on that team. And so I started like kind of really, really getting into Penn State football and fell in love with it. And so I actually committed my junior year of high school, got a tattoo on my arm and everything of Penn State. And that was how the recruiting process went for me. I took one official visit. It was to Penn State. I honored my commitment to Penn State. Tom Bradley, Scrap, they call him, he recruited me. And, I guess the rest is history.
So 2 things stem from that. One, you say you grew up in Pittsburgh. Are you a Steelers fan? Or are you?
I am.
Okay.
To this day.
Yeah, I am as well.
Yeah.
So second, you said Miami was the first school to reach out to you. Who was your first offer? Was that Miami or a different school?
I don't remember who the first offer was. I really don't, because at the point in time, like I said, at the end of my 8th grade year, I got so many letters that I just kind of stopped paying attention to the letters. So I don't even really know who was offering me when, but it was a lot of them. There was a ton of offers, and this was pre-digital age. So imagine your house phone just ringing non-stop. And then obviously receiving letters at school, receiving mail at your house. There was no inboxing, like slide into DMs as a coach or anything like that.
No posting offers on Twitter.
They was sending letters, dog.
It's the only way they could get to you, I guess.
It's the only way they could get to you or come see you. So it was, and I guess that makes me old, but yeah, I don't recall who the first offer was. I don't even recall what it sounded like or what it felt like. I just remember I ended up building a really, really strong relationship with Coach Bradley, and he really, really captured my imagination. He's actually the reason behind me getting number 11 and starting the trend and the tradition connected to 11 at Penn State. So we created a super, super dope relationship, and it just kind of went from there. And I committed my junior year and just never looked back.
So your son, LaVar Arrington II, is actually
the second.
Yes, the class of 2025 linebacker recruit. Just OV'd UCLA. His official visit's coming up at Penn State, June 21st. What are your thoughts on his recruitment, how it might compare to yours, and where he may end up?
I went to what's considered a big school, a power school in high school. We were Quad A in Western PA, and back then, that was the highest level of competition, and it was pretty high-profile conference, and a lot of big talent came from where I was playing. So the amount of attention and the amount of scrutiny and just recruitment was pretty high. My son goes to a school named Charter Oak. It's not a modern day. It's not a D1 school in the California area. It was D4 at one point. I think it was D7 last year. It's like slide and scale, but it's a smaller school. So the amount of attention on him has not been as great. I brought him along pretty slowly. He didn't have the same path as me in playing the game. He was more of a fan of the game. I was a fan of the game, but I was more so trial by fire, where I felt like we took a really, really educated approach in how he grew up and how he developed. And so he didn't play football for a while. I started at 8. I think he started at like 12, 13. And so I think for him, It's definitely been an interesting journey. I got an opportunity to coach him as his defensive coordinator his freshman year. I saw a lot of potential in him, but I didn't see him as being like an elite player. I thought he could be, but I just didn't think that he got it enough where I could actually stamp it and be like, dude's got it. And his sophomore year, it was kind of much of the same. It was like he gets to the ball really, really quickly. Like he gets there quick, but he don't finish. It's like you're not a finisher. It's like kind of like you do all that work to get to where the ball is, but why you not getting to the ball carrier, taking them down? There's somebody else taking them down and you're standing around the pile. This last year, his junior year, it was kind of the same for most of the season, but you could see that there was a progression in how he was doing things. And then we get to the end of the season and he just had one game where he just snapped out. Like it was almost like everything kind of clicked for him. And he grew up like overnight. Like for me, I was old. Like I was a holdback kid. They held me back, you know, and that's a big thing now is holding guys back so they're more mature and they had that click moment earlier than their senior year, you know. So he's 17. I was 18 at this point in his career. I was turning 19 going into my freshman year. He'll be 18, you know. And in fact, if wherever he ends up going, he'll be an early enrollee. So he'll be 17 in his freshman year of college. So I don't really judge him based off of me. I don't do the comparison deal because he's young. You know, he's younger than what I was. But after he had that click moment, he's been a movie. He's been a movie, and I'm not one to be braggadocious about my kids, but he's developing and has turned into a pretty special dude. Like he tracks the ball as fast and as quickly as anyone I've seen at the level. Like if I'm looking at everyone around the country, he's in the top percentile of guys with athletic ability and intelligence to diagnose, and he finishes now. That's been the biggest thing. Will you finish? And so he's now started to finish plays, and it's taken his game, like what it looks like, to a whole entirely different level. So I'm pretty excited for him. As you mentioned, we've been on these official visits, and we're seeing how all of that goes. He's narrowed down to 3 schools, you know, Tennessee, UCLA, and Penn State. We're just taking it day by day, but I think the kid is pretty special. I'm certain that he is the type of talent that if he just maintains a focus and a level of hunger to continue to want to learn and be better, I think his trajectory is pretty high.
Mm. And how do you handle that with, obviously you guys have, as a family, heavy ties to Penn State with you going there and having a ton of success. I mean, Penn State's recruiting him now pretty heavy. So how do you kind of balance that without being pushy?
It's a good question, Dylan, because it's hard to say that you can remove your emotions from it. Like for me, the things that I was able to accomplish and the things that I have experienced as LaVar Arrington, if you can imagine, like why wouldn't you want to go to the school where you come out, if you make a play, the moment, first of all, before you even come out and make a play, the moment you commit to the school, it's you've turned on the lights instantly just based off of your name. It's a blessing and possibly a curse at the same time because he's probably going to be unfairly judged on the type of player that he is and the type of plays that he makes and how he makes them based off of what I did. But I always say the society and the culture we live in today, they remember names. They don't really remember anything else, you know. So I don't know that he will have to deal with the intense scrutiny the way I think or thought that he would have to, because a lot of times people, like there are a lot of people, like even with your video, right? Like people were cutting me from the team. You know, they starting Micah, they benching Abdul, they cutting LaVar, right? So a lot of people don't even really remember who I am. So I think he would have an opportunity to go to Penn State and be able to build his own reputation and build his own legacy, void of it being in my shadow. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that do know who I am, and I think that will bring a level of pressure. But for me, I feel like he's been prepared for it. I mean, it's just kind of something that he's always wanted to do. It's not something that I put in front of him. So I feel like whatever decision he makes, he's going to be a pretty special dude wherever he goes. But if it were to be Penn State, that would be pretty dope.
Yeah, that's probably a really cool feeling as a dad if that does come to fruition.
Yeah, it would be.
All right. Do you have any particular memory or play or game or anything that stands out about your college career as a favorite?
Any particular play that stands out for me from college or game? I'd say my last game sticks out. I'll say this: my first bowl game and my last game, which was my bowl game, stick out. My first bowl game sticks out because I was on the field with Fred Taylor and Javon Curse. And if you know those two names, you look them up. If you don't know them, Fred Taylor is one of the most gifted running backs that I've ever faced in my entire life. Probably the most gifted running back that I've faced. And Javon Curse is one of the most freakishly athletic dudes that you'll ever see ever play the game as well. So I got an opportunity to experience what greatness looked like outside of my own team, because I had some greats on the team with me. But outside of that, I got to see a Florida team that was ridiculously talented. And Fred Taylor and Javon Curse were on that field playing for that team. I say my last bowl game, the Alamo Bowl, because it was things coming full circle. There's probably a whole bunch of other dudes on the other side of that ball that were looking at me and like, that's LaVar Arrington. You know what I mean? Like, dang, like, that's LaVar Arrington, which is like, that's what you do this for, right? If you're going to play the game, you play the game to have an impact where you create something that's worth talking about, where you create something that's worth remembering. And so that was probably the most memorable, because the performance that I put in for my last game was pretty undeniable. I think I forced three interceptions. I had like 3 or 4 sacks. Had like 11, 12, 13 tackles. It was something crazy. My stat line was crazy. And I won MVP of the game. And I won it over all the defenders on the field, which obviously Brandon Short is an amazing linebacker that played for Penn State. Courtney Brown, an amazing defensive end that played for the team, amongst others, Dave Macklin, Mac Morrison, David Fleischauer, Amani Bell, Justin Kirpakis. I mean, it was our team was littered with talent, and so to be able to finish my college career where I got the most valuable player award for the bowl game definitely stands out the most out of most other games that I went through.
Yeah, so you went out on a high note. So a lot of people don't know about this, but tell me a little bit about Adam Sandler and the Waterboy.
So it's interesting. I told people like a long time ago when I was on my first radio show in Washington, D.C., that Adam Sandler came to Penn State, visited with the team, visited with the managers, visited with Coach. He's a big Joe Paterno fan. And for his time there, he actually studied me and what I was doing for his role in the Waterboy. And so, he was sitting with me in the locker room, asking me a ton of questions. Every other word was profanity. He kept apologizing for cursing so much. It's kind of funny. He's a funny dude in real life. And so, yeah, we had an opportunity to spend time. He wrote me an autograph. And the coolest thing about it is a lot of times celebrities are like very, very disconnected. And so I seen him like maybe like 6-7 years ago. And it's maybe even more, but I was at the Super Bowl and he was on Media Row and he came and sat down with us and he told the story like, yeah, I was there to study LaVar Arrington to become the Waterboy. So it's a cool distinction. I like to believe I'm not the based character. You know, I'm not what Bobby Boucher is as a person. But I was certainly a Bobby Boucher with the way he was running the plays and the way he was making his plays during the course of the movie. He came and studied your boy, yours truly, for his role as Bobby Boucher, the water boy. I'm in essence the water boy.
Okay, so as I previously mentioned, you were the second overall pick in the 2000 NFL draft to the Washington Redskins at the time. At one point in your career, was it high school, college, did you realize that you were going to make it and go to the NFL?
It's an interesting question because if I'm being honest, I think at 8 years old, I looked at my mother and I told her I was going to retire one day and I was going to buy her the home of her dreams. Now, I guess you could say it would be naive to say I knew at 8 years old, but I believe in manifesting, and I just felt like at that point in time, I had played a couple games, I had did really well, and I was just confident in telling my mom that, you know, I'm going to retire you soon, and I'm going to do all of these things that are nice for you at some point in the near future. And, you know, that's kind of what happened. You know, it was a driving force, and that's what ended up happening.
So right around when you retired, there was a motorcycle accident that you were involved in. Is that the reason you retired, or was it something else, or what was the situation there?
It's interesting because I don't really talk about it much at all. I broke my arm, mangled my arm, my wrist, like destroyed my wrist. They had to do a skin graft off of my leg. The bike went into my leg. I don't even remember it. It happened so quickly. A lot of people report and say that I retired because I wrecked the motorcycle, but I had checked out. I had been released from the Giants, and I hadn't even finished my rehab for my Achilles tendon. I broke up out of New Jersey and went back to Maryland, back to where I felt like I belonged. And I limped for like 3 years after I blew my Achilles tendon in my last season with the New York Giants. So for me, like, I was done playing football when I was sitting on the turf in Texas Stadium, looking around, you know, smelling the popcorn and, you know, smelling everything. I took in the sights, I took in the sounds, because I knew in my heart and in my mind that was the last time I'd ever be on the football field this way. So, but, you know, that's how the cookie crumbles sometime. And I'm grateful for my time in the league. I'm also grateful for the opportunities that I had and I have based upon the person that I was and the player that I was when I played the game.
Right. So would you say it was pretty tough for you to walk away from it, or were you satisfied with your body of work at the time?
You know, I was satisfied. I knew I was going to be a Hall of Famer, but I was definitely satisfied with my body of work. I feel like I left some things on the table, but sometimes, you know, you leave things on the table and you don't always finish everything that's on your plate, and you don't always, you know, you try to put your best foot forward, but it doesn't always happen that way. It doesn't always play out the way that you had hoped, imagined, or thought that it would. And I feel like for all the things that I'm doing now to accomplish and to be more in life, I don't know that I would have been this motivated and this inspired for this chapter of my life had I had the type of career that I thought I was going to have as a pro. So it ultimately worked out the way that it was supposed to work out because I'm so inspired to be more in life. And I feel like ultimately the shortcomings of what took place when I was in the league was a tremendous catalyst for me to actually want to approach what I do in life even more so intensely than what I had ever done at any other point in my life.
So switching gears, looking at the current roster, it's the linebacker room in particular. Is there anyone that really stands out to you that people aren't paying enough attention to, or that you think could be due for a big season?
So there's two names, and listen, Abdul moved from linebacker, and he's more of a edge now, and will be a positive contributor as an edge, as a move around guy. But as a true linebacker, Kobe King has got to be the most underrated linebacker in the entire world. I mean, if you could carve out, chisel up, put the description next to the carving and the and the sculpture of a man that Kobe King is, like, that's who would be the picture, the standard of the example. I love his game. He plays physical. He plays fast. He's got a nose and a knack for the ball. You can tell he's super smart in how it is that he conducts the business and directs the players around. I just think he's special. I really, really, truly hope he gets his just due this year because he has been a guy for Penn State and college football. I say the second name I would give you is Tony Rojas. Everybody's buzzing about him, and they should be rightfully so. He's athletic, he's big, he's strong, he's smart, and he does things the right way. You know, I was talking to my son, about Tony Rojas not too long ago, and he was like, Dad, he's just always in the gym. Like they had the spring game, he was in the gym. They're like, yeah, you got to get out of the gym. We got a game to play, da-da-da. And he just looked at him and laughed. I said, I wish I had that time. I had work ethic and I worked my ass off, but I wish I had the type of work ethic where I lived in the gym. You know, I lived in the meeting rooms and did everything that I was required to do and then some. I wish that was the way that I approached my college career. I ended up learning that later on in life, but I look at how he prepares himself, and it's pretty second to none how he prepares himself. And ultimately, I think those are the reasons why guys like him end up being so successful.
Right. I mean, you really saw the impact of that his freshman year as soon as he got on campus, as soon as he was provided with those resources, the nutrition program, the weight room, all that. He went from, I think, 195 to 225.
Yeah.
His weight in one off season.
Yeah,
so as soon as he got those resources provided to him, he was ready to go.
Yep.
Penn State recently made a new hire at defensive coordinator then with former Indiana head coach Tom Allen. Do you have any thoughts on him or what he might bring to the table?
He's going to bring an older feel, like more of a fatherly. It seems like he has more of a fatherly feel, a fatherly vibe to him. Whereas like Manny and Pry, they were more like you related to them. I think Allen is like an old head. You're not going to relate to him. But sometimes when you have coaches like Allen, guys gravitate to him and feel as though they can trust him and feel as though the things that he's saying are accurate to the success that you're seeking and the little things that you need to do. And so I think their defense they'll be pretty good this year. I know they lost, the two ends. You lose Chop, you lose Adisa. Those are big losses. But Sutton and guys, Devon on the inside, I mean, you have some really, Abdul is going to be out there on the D-line this year. You have some really, really special guys athletically and maturity-wise that are out there on the field. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a much more dominant defense this year than what it has been in quite some time.
Right. And what do you think is of the team as a whole? And do you have a record prediction or anything like that for the year?
I think the team's going to have a good year, but I always think they're going to have a good year. And so they're not having a good year until they're not having a good year, right? So for me, I'm kind of a wait and see type of guy. I'm optimistic that they can win the better vast majority of their games. But I'm a tad bit concerned, maybe a tad bit nervous that the scheduling and how hard the conferences are and everybody loading up and gearing up to come to the Big Ten this year, and it's going to be I'm concerned if we lose. I'm concerned because there's all kinds of crazy feelings circulating around about the head coach, and for good or for worse, for bad or for better, he's got to do something that ultimately moves the needle in the right direction in terms of the next level for this team. And so we're going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. But I'm hopeful, based upon the amount of talent that we have on our roster, that this new offensive coordinator, has our quarterback, has Drew Aller loosen up and just play his game. Get your proper reads, know what your proper reads are, get out there, throw the ball, play your game. Because I think Drew Aller is the first franchise quarterback we've had since Kerry Collins. And we've had a few good quarterbacks, like, obviously Mike Robinson is a dope name. Daryl Clark is a dope name during that time period. So we've had quarterbacks, Hackenberg, dope quarterback. So, but, you still got to get in there and you still got to do it. And that's kind of like the key to it. Like, get yourself prepared, but you still got to get in there. You still got to do it.
Right. I'm personally bullish on Aller. I think if he has the right offensive coordinator, that it could unleash his potential. I mean, the thing with Kotelnicki, instead of trying to get the players to fit his scheme, I think he's going to build the scheme around the talent and where the offense is strongest from a roster standpoint. I think he'll kind of play off that. So I think that could be a really positive thing for the team, for sure.
I like it.
Yep. And before we get out of here, I have to ask about Serena Williams. What was your interaction with her? How did that all play out? Like, what's the deal there?
I never really talk about or discuss that aspect, that time, that person. I've always felt like I need to be respectful of, the privacy of knowing her. You never want to be a person that's like, yeah, I know her, that type of deal. Me and Serena at one point were probably like best friends. We ended up meeting at an ESPN commercial shoot when they used to do the commercial shoots that were like you're walking through the office and something's going on. There's a king chair and LeBron James is sitting in the chair, and they were doing those funny, cool little commercials. So we were at the video shoot, and we met, and we were cool. Like we ended up talking. Like I had a thing for her. I'll admit that. Like I mean, who didn't have a crush on Serena back then? And if you, especially somebody like me, you'd have a crush. So it was kind of like a crush deal. I talked to her manager. We ended up meeting and hanging out, and we were pretty close for it was a few years. We hung out with each other for a few years, and some would say, the story would have it that I've never said this out loud, but we actually dated. I've said it's like the first time I'm ever saying this. And we dated for a while. I went through a lot with her. We grew up a lot. When she was transitioning from being a star tennis player to a superstar tennis player, I was there. And I got to see the rise of her going from being a star with the beads in her hair, like she was still wearing beads. This goes back to like early 2000s. And then she transitioned into being a young woman, like being a woman and being like Serena, and it was pretty cool. It's pretty interesting because you're hanging out with somebody. They say you are the company that you keep, and so I was hanging out with somebody who would eventually be the greatest, one of the greatest athletes. I won't even just put her under greatest woman athlete, female athlete. Like, she's one of the greatest athletes of all time, and easily dominated this last generation of athletics. So it's pretty cool to know that someone who accomplished everything that I would have wanted to accomplish was able to do it. And so I never really talked about, well, why didn't it work out, or why didn't you guys stay together? We were young. We were like, literally, we were young. I was just coming into the league. There was just a lot of different things going on, a lot of different powers pulling this way, that way, and it didn't kind of solidify itself that way. But yeah, I was always a fan of her. Continued to be a fan of her, and what her endeavors were and her life was. Still to this day, keep up with what she's got going on, and am a fan of, her accomplishments and different things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I may have, I don't know. I think there was a book that was written. I don't know. They say that, I might have had a negative impact on her. I don't know why that would be, but I felt like we were always really cool. I got to know the family really well. I was around when, her sister, tragically, had her, lost her life. I was around, but life went on. It's kind of interesting. You every once in a while you think about, like, did I make the right decision? Definitely did. I definitely did. Yeah, I definitely did. But nonetheless, it definitely was a time where we were really close. We were really close with one another, and I went to tennis matches, was a part of the tennis community and stuff like that, and seen a lot of stuff, man. So that's the Serena story. Super proud of you, Serena, and super proud of what she's accomplished. And yeah, that was a long time ago, but absolutely was something that was something at one point.
Mm. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for episode 1 of the Penn State Pulse. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, LaVar, for hopping on.
Appreciate you having me on, man.
I'm sure you'll be on here again as we're working together.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you do, man. I really am. I'm excited about what you bring to the table. I think the stuff that you do is funny as hell. I think you're pretty creative, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the content that you produce and where it all goes. So appreciate you having me on as the inaugural, the first of the podcast shows officially under DisruptU PSU that you've done. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of fun and unique content on the way. But for now, signing off. Thanks again for watching.
Let's go!